where would we be without jigsaw puzzles? This one, this Retinette, that is a UK Retinette. It's got the front from the later model, the top from the 022. So it's a one that was made for the UK market only. This is not looking particularly happy. Apparently there was a problem with the film advance. The film advance lever wasn't returning. It was diagnosed as having a broken spring. Anyway, it's got as far as me, and I've got to see what's wrong with it, or right with it, as the case may be. The back release is pretty tight. Top cover's got a big bash in it here. I think I've got all the pieces here. That's the rewind button. No, it's the film release button. Here's a couple of screws. One of them's from the top cover. The other two, I'm not really convinced that they're chrome plated, but you never know. What else we got here? We got the shoe. Mismatched screws, got nothing to do with this camera. And the advance lever. No leatherette patch, but at least it's got its screws. So, start taking this apart. So off with the rewind knob. All of the screws are out of the top. That was round back to front. This is looking in a very unhappy state. There doesn't seem to be any spring tension on there at all. That might not mean an awful lot. We'll have to find out. Okay, so we know, let's get that shutter release out of there. No spring on that, I noticed. That's not a good sign. Let's open up the base of the camera. I'll just start putting these pieces. I want them going through the cleaner as quickly as I can. Also, I don't want the spring going through the cleaner, so I'll separate that off. The film rewind knob here, I'll just disassemble this. The screw's not particularly tight. That spring can go through the washer, the screw can go through the washer. These pieces do not. Top cover, that's got a rattle to it. What's going on there? That glass is loose at the front. The frame counter piece here. Looks like it works. We'll put that to one side. Alright, get this off. I've got the screws out, it's not wanting to lift off. Okay, so we've got that off. And the leatherette on the base. Let's see what we can do about that. You never really know what you're going to strike with leatherette. That's got to feel like it's got adhesive under there that's not the original adhesive, because it's a bit rubbery feeling. The original stuff wouldn't have done that. I'll try a drop of naphtha under there, which may soften the adhesive for me, or at least make it easier for the scalpel blade to slide underneath. You certainly need the base plate off this camera, if for no other reason, to see what's going on with that film advance shaft. It appears to have no tension, but knowing that someone's been mucking with the top, that all the tension could have unwound. Retinettes are a bit of a challenge to reassemble compared to retinas. They're just a bit awkward, the layout of stuff. They lack the lock lever that the retinas have. So with the retinas, they have a lock lever, and if you leave that set, that'll just holds the film advance in its rest position while you're assembling stuff. Retinettes don't have that, so the film advance shaft is always trying to unwind. Once you have nothing holding it in place. Oh, this adhesive is really gummy. Look at that. Very rubbery stuff. That'll have to all come off. That will come off easily enough though. Okay, so what can we see under here? Well, that looks to be an incorrect screw. It is. That tells me someone's been in here who probably shouldn't. Screw missing here. That screw's a chrome screw. That should have been holding the top cover in place. Okay, let's get that trim off. Okay, so what can we see here? Well, this lever here is in the wrong position. That should be swung right around over there. I can't even get it to move. To have the tripod socket off, the screws are loose anyway. Alright, so yeah, this is a bit of a roughie. Let's get that screw off there. Someone went to a lot of trouble to do that up. This is all pretty mutilated looking. Someone's had to go at that with various implements. Farm implements by the looks of it. Get that lever off. Let's have the top off here. Oh yes, there's all sorts of exciting stuff here. These screws are not what I'd normally expect to see there. Most definitely. This is an incorrect screw. That screw should have been holding this down at the other end. Like this one here probably is the correct screw. Oh, this screw in there, what's that doing there? That's got no business being there. That is the other chrome screw missing from the top cover. There's not even supposed to be anything in there, I think. Take this apart. So what I'm interested in here really, because this is a real disaster, is whether there actually was a real underlying natural fault, or whether all of the problems have been introduced by someone chasing a non-existent fault, or chasing a fault in the incorrect way. Let's have that spring off there. We'll have the rewind button off. This has supposedly been diagnosed by a camera technician at some stage. I don't necessarily mean that the state we see it in today is the state that it was in after the camera technician had diagnosed it. It may have had home repair attempts by one or two people since then. It doesn't look like the work of a repair person. Let's have these three screws out here. What I was led to believe is that the spring on this film advance shaft was broken, and that the technician said that they couldn't get one. And I have reason to believe that's may not entirely be true. No, it's there. There's nothing broken with it. So that's fine. It simply lost its tension because someone had been in at the top of the camera. Now here, what's going on here with the release lever? Now it will go in the right position if you hold your mouth right. Let's get that off because that's gummy. There's the release lever. That spring's a bit mutilated, but that's hardly surprising since the lever was about 90 degrees out from where it should have been sitting. Let's have this out. The camera, there's a bit of sand and other rubbish in here. To have the clutch out. Take that apart. Take the film take-up spool out. That's got a nasty dull look to it. That's usually a sign of solvent damage. Inside here, what do we see? Well, I'll zoom you in a bit. You can see there film chips. Some of those are pretty old because I don't recognise the anti-halation backing colour on that from that film. Lots of dirty dried grease and a lot of grit. Oh, the spring is off the lever here. This is the lever which would lock the rewind button. That spring was not in place. Doesn't mean it necessarily was already dislodged. I might have done that. and I want to remove the shutter from the front of the body. This leatherette here is broken. It's peeling off and it's broken. It's going to have to be removed completely and put back together. I'll find the tool for getting this apart. This spanner should do it. If it'll pass through the baffle. No, it won't. Okay, I'm going to have to use another tool to get that retaining ring loose. This pair of modified circlip pliers will probably do the job. Yeah, it's not tight. It's probably not tight because someone else found it just as troublesome to do the thing up. It's a bit sticky feeling. It's not tight on the thread. See if I can get that to come loose for me with a pushing that retaining ring round with a screwdriver. Okay, it's loose. Our flash contact here has been soldered. Normally on that one it would be using a little plastic connector. I'll just desolder that wire. Right, well that's desoldered, everything's out. Just out of curiosity, does this thing cock? Yeah, cocks and fires. So the shutter basically is a runner. Doesn't mean it won't need servicing, but at least it's got the makings of one that'll go. That's the wrong screw. That one I'm not so sure of. I'm going to want all this out the front. Let's put a couple of drops of naphtha on here because it's going to be otherwise tricky getting past that nasty gooey adhesive. That's just the retaining ring floating around loose in the back, and put that with the shutter. Yeah, these screws do not look like the right ones for the job. So, oh yeah, look, that's not even tight. No, it's too small, it's out of the base plate. Okay, so let's get this out. This is full of sand. There's our return spring from the shutter release that was floating around loose in there. That little strip of packing, I'm not sure where that belongs. We'll find that out later. It's probably just a trim from along here, I think. The camera body's pretty much stripped out now. There's not much left to see in that. That'll need a lot of cleaning. This front piece here, let's get it apart. This is all, it's like working in a sand pit here now. Everything's very gritty. So we can conjecture as to what its original fault was. I know from what I can see that the reputed problem with the film advance was not the case. I'm going to blow all this out to get the sand out of there. Otherwise I'll have to remove these two patches to get at the screws which are underneath them, and I'd rather not remove those if I don't have to. I'm likely to end up damaging them. Okay, so these bits off to the ultrasonic cleaner, get degreased. They should come back nice and clean. What other bits have I got here? Oh, there's a few odd screws here. It'd be interesting to do. I'll know when I start putting the camera back together, because I just throw all the screws into the mix together and I know what screws go where. So as I continue my way through it, if I reach out for a screw and it's not present, I'll know it's been lost. And at the end of the day, since lots of screw holes were filled with something, I'll probably have screws I'm looking for which I can't find, and foreigners which don't belong. But we'll find out. This off to the cleaner first anyway, that's disgusting. As you can see, I've been busy. I had to strip the leatherettes off the body completely, get rid of the corrosion and rubbish that was underneath the leatherettes. Had to remove the back catch. I've blown all the sand and grit out of the front section, cleaned all those pieces up, so they're good to go. And now I've got to go through the business of putting it all back together. So I'll get the back catch in place because it's convenient, not have this thing flapping around all the time. And as soon as I've got that done, I can start putting the leatherettes back on the camera back and both sides of the front. Now one side was loose when we started off, that was flapping, and I could tell it was cracked, and it certainly was cracked. Its mate on the other side wasn't cracked and it was a bit more difficult to remove, but it did come off. The leatherette on the back, that was just plain ugly. It's bumpy, a lot of the finish has gone off it in spots. I'm sure it'll look a bit better once it's back down and as smooth as I can get it, but it's never going to be a thing of great beauty. But with that being said, I can start putting this back catch together, I think. Okay, so the back catch, this has all been cleaned. It's got a little bit of rust or oxidisation on it. That's quite normal and that shouldn't be a great problem. There's the retaining plate, and that's held in the two tiny screws. Doesn't want to start. What's going on here? Is that plate not sitting down correctly? It's not really. That's a bit better. This camera is never going to be a thing of beauty, unfortunately. It's too far gone from that. But it'll look tidy enough. It'll be fine. It'll be a vast improvement on what it currently is. Right, so the button. Well, here's the return spring for the button. They're quite stiff, that return spring. It looks much like the one for the back catch release, back catch cover. From Retina's, but it's not the same. It's a heavier spring. I'm using a pin vise here to hold that screw, the button, and put that back in there, and I've got to hold this down while I get this started from the other end and tighten that up. That's the back catch back in place. It even works reasonably well. Okay, I'll get the leatherettes back on here next, because the sooner I have them not sitting around where they can fall to bits, the better it'll be. We'll start with the leatherette on the camera back. This is a bit cracked, but hopefully it'll work fine. And I may have been over generous here. I'll just remove the excess here because that will be doing no good at all. And might even lead to lumps and bumps in the leatherette, which of course we want to avoid at all costs because that's what we came here to see the back of. Right, putting this on the camera, the most important thing to do is make sure you put it the right way up. Most disconcerting if the writing is upside down. Make sure it's tucked in against the hinge at one end neatly and against the end bracket there at the other end. You may need to shuffle it up or down slightly to get it to set neatly into the recess. Make sure that's moulded down tight. Now I can see the leatherette's cracked at that point. Let's see if I can encourage that to lie down flat there. It probably had a Zeiss bumps under it at that point, so the leatherette cracks because it's been pushed up. There's just a tiny hole in it there and a crack running across. That we can deal with later. The important thing is to get this stuck down now. And it's sitting fairly flat. Some of these marks, like here, 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 here and here, I don't know what to make of those. The finish is gone. It's like localized solvent damage, though it might not be that, but it's got that sort of appearance where the surface is gone. I'm just going to wipe off any excess adhesive that's squeezed out from the edge there. While it's still soft, I'll just take that off with a bit of put a bit of naphtha on a cotton bud and run that along there. Well, that looks good. That's a good result. Now I'll put the leatherettes on the camera front. Right, well this leatherette is ready to go on. Now the leatherette's a bit unusual on this camera because they don't extend all the way across the front, because the front section covers some of that camera. So why they did that, just to save a little bit of leatherette, I don't know really. Make sure I've got even cover here to the corners. That looks okay. Which is up, that's up. This is between chrome trims top and bottom, so you need to make sure you've got it fairly well centered there. Just rubbing off any excess that's squeezed out there while it's still soft. That looks good, and I'll do the piece to the other side. This is broken. This is not in a good state at all. But hopefully once it's all in place, that will not be obvious. Yeah, as you can see, this doesn't come all the way to the edge of the body moulding. When you're putting it on, you need to line it with the moulding at the end here. So I want to get this centered up, make sure that it's pressed flat where those breaks in it are, that the broken edges butt up against each other, that they're not overlapping each other, otherwise the lump will be there forever. That looks okay. Just wipe off that squeezed out adhesive. That's the other break there, isn't it? Make sure that's down firmly. Okay, that's pretty good. Bit of squeezed out adhesive there from that crack. But that's good, that's a good result. So those leatherettes now are glued back firmly. There was a lot of corrosion under there. It needed to be scraped off and removed. And now it has been scraped off and removed. So that's good. That body shell is ready for me to start reassembling the mechanical stuff into it. Unfortunately, I have my parts back from the cleaning process, so I'll be able to start getting these pieces back in place.